The Galactic Empire killed a human child. Earth answered with total war. Most adults were already at work, repairing machines or tending the small farms that provided food for the settlement. Children played in the alleys, chased each other, or tried to imitate the adults by carrying tiny tools. Ben loved the sound of the wind and the feeling of the sun on his face, but today something in the air felt different. He did not know what it was, but his mother, Claire, noticed. She had always been protective of him, and she followed from a distance, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. The colony was under the control of the Galactic Empire. The Empire claimed to protect humanity, but most people on the frontier knew that protection came with strict rules. Citizens had to follow orders, report unusual behavior, and never question Imperial soldiers. For most, life went on quietly, but fear always lingered beneath the surface. Ben's father, Rick, had once spoken about the old wars before the Empire arrived. He told stories of humans traveling freely through space, discovering new worlds and fighting for their own. Those stories felt far away now, almost like a dream, but Ben loved them. He dreamed of joining the Star Fleet one day, of flying past planets and seeing alien worlds, just like in his father's stories. That morning, Imperial soldiers arrived suddenly, their ships hovering low above the colony. The children screamed and ran, but Ben froze in place, staring at the massive shadows over the houses. Soldiers moved through the streets with harsh steps, scanning the area. One of them, a tall figure in black armor, spotted Ben. The child waved his toy ship nervously, hoping to show that he was harmless. The soldier did not smile. He motioned for the others, and in moments they surrounded the small boy. "What are you doing here?" the soldier asked, his voice cold and commanding. Ben stammered, I was just playing, sir." The soldier's eyes narrowed. He did not seem interested in words. Another soldier, younger and impatient, reached for Ben. His hand was rough and Ben flinched. Before anyone could react, a loud voice shouted from behind the soldiers. Claire ran forward, her arms outstretched. "Leave him alone," she cried, her voice filled with fear and anger. The soldiers hesitated for a moment, but it was brief. The commanding soldier raised a hand, and a strange weapon that glowed in blue light activated. Ben's toy ship fell from his hands as the weapon discharged. The bright light blinded everyone for a moment, and when it faded, Ben was gone. Claire screamed, falling to her knees, tears running down her face. The soldiers did not stop to comfort her. They marched away, leaving the colony in shock. News of Ben's death spread quickly. Messages were sent to Earth, and the story traveled through networks that the Empire could not fully control. Alex, a naval officer stationed on Earth, read the reports with growing anger. He had seen violence before, but something about the death of a child touched him differently. He could not explain it, but he felt that the Empire had crossed a line that could never be ignored. Emma, a civilian analyst working in Earth's Defense Command, watched the images of the destroyed colony on the large screen. She saw the fear, the chaos, and the loss in the faces of the people left behind. She thought about her own niece and nephew and felt the same helpless rage that Alex did. She knew that the Empire would claim it was an accident, that the soldiers were following orders, but she also knew that excuses would not bring Ben back. The leaders of Earth gathered in an emergency meeting. They discussed options carefully, but every suggestion returned to one point. The Empire had killed a human child. It was no longer a political issue. It was personal for every human who heard the news. The representatives debated quietly, but their faces were hard, and their voices carried a quiet determination. They knew that if they did nothing, the Empire would continue to act with impunity, and more children would die. Alex and Emma were chosen to be part of the first team sent to assess the situation. Alex's experience in fleet command and Emma's knowledge of imperial strategies made them the ideal pair. They traveled to the outer colonies, gathering information and meeting survivors. Everywhere they went, people whispered about Ben and the soldiers. Children no longer played freely. Parents kept their families close, fearing that the Empire could strike at any time. The grief of one small town became the grief of many. The Empire responded with its usual arrogance. Messages sent back to Earth claimed that the soldiers had acted correctly, that the child's death was an unfortunate accident, and that humans should be grateful for Imperial protection. The words were cold, empty, and false. On Earth, anger boiled. The public demanded action. Protests erupted, but Earth's leaders maintained calm. They knew that this was bigger than anger. It was about survival, dignity, and justice. As Alex and Emma traveled, they saw the beginnings of human resistance. Small groups of civilians had begun to organize. They were not soldiers, but farmers, teachers, and engineers who wanted to protect their people. They shared stories of what had happened to Ben, of how the Empire had treated their neighbors and friends. These stories spread like fire, and soon the idea of revenge, of standing up, was no longer frightening. It became necessary. Alex spoke to the groups quietly, giving instructions but also listening. He told them that the human spirit could not be crushed, that they had survived worse than the Empire imagined. He encouraged them to think strategically, to use their knowledge of their own worlds to defend themselves. Emma worked alongside him, studying Imperial tactics and finding weaknesses in their patrol routes, communication systems, and supply lines. Together, they began to see a pattern in the Empire's arrogance. The Empire believed humans were weak, easily broken, and disorganized. They were wrong. Meanwhile, news of the child's death reached the Galactic Senate in distant systems. Some alien species whispered disapproval, questioning why the Empire acted so harshly. Others stayed silent, fearing retaliation. But within Earth, the story of Ben became a symbol. It was no longer about one child. It was about the value of every human life. Mothers and fathers, soldiers and civilians, all felt that if Ben could be killed so easily, no one was safe. And if no one was safe, the only choice was to fight. As the days passed, Alex and Emma returned to Earth with detailed reports. They described the colonies, the survivors, the fears, and the anger that simmered in every town. They suggested a careful but firm response. The Empire had made a mistake. They had underestimated humanity. Alex believed that humans would never forget Ben, and they would not forgive. Emma added that a clear show of strength was necessary to prevent future attacks. The leaders of Earth listened. They realized that this was no ordinary incident. This was a turning point. The public demanded justice, but Earth's leaders were patient. They knew that a hasty response could lead to more deaths. Instead, they began to prepare, quietly but thoroughly. Factories that had been dormant for years restarted. Engineers worked on ships, weapons, and defenses that humans had once dreamed about but had not built. Children like Ben would never have a chance to grow up if the Empire's arrogance continued unchecked. The human race would not allow it. Alex walked through the shipyards, watching workers assemble vessels designed for speed and defense. He thought about Ben and the countless children who would never see the stars if the Empire's rule continued. He felt a mix of grief and determination. Emma joined him, carrying a tablet with intelligence reports. She smiled faintly. "They think they can break us with fear," she said. "But fear makes us stronger." Alex nodded, understanding what she meant. Humans had been pushed to the edge, and now they would respond with the force and unity that only desperation and righteousness could create. Far across the galaxy, in Imperial command centers, generals discussed the colonies. They mentioned Ben briefly, but only as a casualty of enforcement. They did not understand the storm that was forming on Earth. They assumed humans would remain small, quiet, and submissive. They did not see the network of communication, the speed of the human mind, and the unity of a species that had always survived against impossible odds. The Empire had killed a child, but in doing so, it had awakened something far greater. As night fell over Earth, families gathered together, telling stories to their children about courage, hope, and survival. The image of Ben, a small boy with a wooden ship, was remembered in every home. Parents whispered his name, promising that his life would not be forgotten. Soldiers prepared quietly in barracks, engineers worked tirelessly in factories, and leaders made decisions that would shape the future. Every human knew in that quiet moment that they had been forced to choose, either submit to fear and oppression or rise and fight. The first part of the story ends with Alex looking at the stars from the command deck of a fleet ship. The lights of the colonies blinked below, small but alive. He thought about Ben and the promise that no human would ever be treated as expendable again. Emma joined him, standing silently as the ships prepared for the long journey ahead. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. The death of one child had changed everything, and humanity was ready to answer. Human fleets moved through the dark reaches of space, silent and ready. The ships were smaller than the Empire's massive cruisers, but they were fast, well-armed, and controlled by people who would not give up. Captain Lucas stood on the bridge of his flagship, eyes fixed on the stars. His hands rested lightly on the control panel, but his mind was alert. He knew that the Empire expected humans to panic, to retreat, and to be crushed like insects. They were wrong. Emma stood beside him, holding a tablet with the latest intelligence. She pointed to a cluster of Imperial patrol ships that had moved into the sector. "They are expecting us," she said. "They think they can ambush us near the Belmer system, but their formation is weak. If we strike at the right moment, we can break them before they even know what hit them." Lucas nodded. "We cannot waste lives," he said. "Every ship, every crew member, every shot counts. We are not here to play games. We are here to show them that humans are not weak." The first engagement began quietly. Imperial sensors detected the human fleet and prepared their weapons. They believed their numbers and firepower would guarantee victory. Their commanders gave orders with confidence, expecting a swift victory that would humiliate the humans. The patrol ships moved to block the humans, but Lucas had already predicted their strategy. Human ships split into smaller units, weaving through asteroid fields and using the terrain of space itself as cover. The first shots fired were small, precise, and deadly. Human lasers struck the engines of Imperial ships, disabling them without destroying the hull. The goal was simple: break their formation, confuse them, and force mistakes. Imperial commanders shouted orders, but confusion spread quickly. Their ships collided, weapons misfired, and the advantage of size disappeared. Lucas directed the fleet with calm precision. Every move was coordinated, every ship had a purpose. He felt a strange satisfaction, not from violence, but from watching humans prove that they could be clever, fast, and united. Emma called out updates from her tablet, giving information on enemy weaknesses and predicting movements. Together, they turned the battle into a dance, with humans always one step ahead of the Empire. The first major Imperial cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash of light. Smoke and debris filled the void, drifting slowly as smaller ships tried to rescue survivors. The humans allowed them to leave, taking only those who could fight or provide intelligence. Lucas knew that mercy was part of the strategy. If humans became like the Empire, they would lose the moral advantage that fueled their courage. The Empire expected cruelty, but humanity gave something they could not understand: control, discipline, and respect for life where possible. As the battle continued, more Imperial ships fell. The humans adapted to every attack, predicting enemy movements before they happened. Alien officers on the Imperial side began to doubt their leaders, whispering among themselves about how unusual these humans were. They had never seen a species fight with such unity, such determination, and such clear purpose. For the first time, fear entered the hearts of the Empire's troops. Back on Earth, leaders watched the battle unfold through long-range sensors. They cheered quietly when reports of victories came in, but they also calculated the costs. Every engagement taught them something new. Engineers noted which weapons were effective. Strategists recorded the patterns of Imperial mistakes, and analysts tracked the morale of both fleets. It was not a reckless fight. It was a lesson in strategy, endurance, and human resilience. Lucas directed his fleet to push deeper into Imperial space. They encountered small supply convoys, lightly defended outposts, and even civilian transport ships used by the Empire. Lucas made careful decisions. Supply ships carrying weapons and fuel were targeted, slowing the Empire's logistics. Civilian transports were left untouched, proving that humans were precise in their goals. Emma calculated trajectories, predicting escape routes and minimizing risks. Every small victory strengthened human morale. The Empire began sending reinforcements, larger ships with more firepower. They assumed that sheer force would crush the humans. Instead, humans used hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly and disappearing into asteroid belts, nebulae, and planetary rings. The Empire's ships struggled to adapt. The alien commanders were frustrated, unable to accept that the humans were not acting recklessly, but intelligently. Lucas smiled when reports came in. Another cruiser immobilized, several patrols forced to retreat, and morale among human crews at an all-time high. As the battle raged on, Lucas received a message from Emma. "We have an opportunity," she said. "There is a weak point in their formation near the Orvos sector. If we strike together, we can take out a major fleet unit. It will change the balance of this entire region." Lucas nodded. "Prepare the teams, this will be our turning point." Human ships gathered, forming a precise strike group. Every crew member knew the plan. They moved silently, avoiding detection until the perfect moment. Then, in a synchronized strike, they attacked. Imperial ships were hit in rapid succession. Engines failed, weapons went offline, and chaos spread through their ranks. The victory was overwhelming. The human strike group disabled an entire Imperial fleet, forcing the survivors to flee. For the first time, the Empire realized that humans were not just survivors, they were a threat. Whispers of rebellion and fear spread among the alien officers. Reports of human discipline and clever tactics reached the highest levels of Imperial command. The Emperor himself took notice, his anger growing with every message. On Earth, news of the victory sparked celebrations, but there was no false triumph. Leaders reminded people that this was only the beginning. Lucas's fleet returned to a safe station for repairs and resupply. Engineers worked tirelessly to restore damaged ships, while crews rested and prepared for the next engagement. Human strategy had proven effective, but the Empire would respond with greater force. The battle had awakened something in humanity, but it had also awakened the full wrath of the Galactic Empire. Back in Imperial command, generals debated what to do next. Some argued for overwhelming force, others suggested negotiation. The Emperor, however, refused to show weakness. He demanded total retaliation, promising to crush the humans completely. Alien officers feared the consequences, but their words were ignored. They underestimated one simple fact: humans were not afraid of retaliation. They had already seen what the Empire was capable of, and they had decided that survival, dignity, and justice were worth any cost. Lucas walked on the deck of his flagship, watching the stars. Each light represented a system, a planet, a possible home for humans or aliens. He thought about Ben, the child whose death had started this chain of events. He felt a quiet determination in his chest. Every ship, every crew member, every strategy was part of a promise. Humanity would not be destroyed. They would survive, adapt, and win. And no empire, no matter how powerful, could take that away. Emma joined him, standing silently. She had spent hours analyzing data, predicting the next moves of the Empire and planning counterattacks. She handed Lucas a tablet. "We have their patterns," she said. "We know how they will respond to our next move. If we act smart, we can force them to retreat further, maybe even panic them." Lucas studied the tablet. "We cannot show mercy to their commanders," he said, "but we will protect civilians wherever possible. They are not the enemy. Only the Empire is. We fight them, not the innocent." The human crews prepared for the next engagement with a mixture of fear and determination. They knew that more battles would come, that losses would happen, but they also knew that they were changing the galaxy's perception of humanity. Aliens who had once mocked humans now whispered about them in fear and respect. Reports of human adaptability, courage, and unity spread through Imperial channels, sowing doubt and hesitation. As the fleet moved toward the next target, Lucas looked at the stars again. He imagined the colonies they were protecting, the families who relied on humans to defend them, and the child who had started it all. Ben's memory was with every soldier, engineer, and strategist. Humans fought not just for survival, but for the promise that no life would be treated as expendable. The Empire's arrogance was beginning to crack. Its leaders had believed humans would bend, submit, or be destroyed easily. Instead, they faced a species that refused to yield, that learned from every mistake, and that could strike with precision when needed. The galaxy was beginning to take notice. Humans were no longer seen as weak. They were clever, fierce, and united. The third part of the story ends with Lucas standing on the bridge as the fleet entered a dense asteroid field near the next Imperial system. The stars glimmered, the ships hummed with energy, and every crew member knew that the next battle could be their hardest. But for the first time, humans were confident. They had proven that they could fight, adapt, and survive against the Empire, and they would not stop until justice was done. The human fleet moved steadily deeper into Imperial space. Each jump through warp drove them closer to the core worlds, closer to the heart of the Empire. Lucas walked the bridge of his flagship, observing the crew as they worked. Every officer, every pilot, every engineer was tense but determined. They had survived the first battles, but they all knew that the coming fights would be harsher, deadlier, and more unpredictable. Emma stood beside Lucas, scrolling through intelligence reports. "The Empire is starting to change tactics," she said. "They are reinforcing key systems, moving fleets to block our path, and preparing ambushes. They know we are a threat now." Lucas nodded. "Good. We want them alert. We want them to make mistakes because of fear. Humans do not fight recklessly, but we fight smart. That is our advantage." As the fleet entered the Orvos sector, the first sign of heavy resistance appeared. A group of Imperial dreadnoughts, massive ships bristling with weapons, blocked the main route. Alien commanders assumed that humans would retreat at their sight, but Lucas had already predicted this. He split the fleet into smaller units, using the asteroid fields and debris of dead planets as cover. Humans moved silently, unseen until the moment they struck. The battle began with precision attacks on the engines of the dreadnoughts. Human lasers were fast, accurate, and controlled. The ships were smaller than the Empire's, but their agility allowed them to strike in places that Imperial sensors could not detect. One dreadnought exploded, sending fire and debris across the sector. The remaining ships struggled to regroup, but victory came at a cost. Several human vessels were damaged and some crews were lost. Laura, a medical officer, worked tirelessly to save wounded soldiers. The corridors of the fleet were filled with the sounds of alarms, the cries of the injured, and the constant hum of machinery. Laura moved from patient to patient, keeping hope alive even when the injuries seemed too severe. She remembered Ben, and she fought harder, believing that every life mattered. On the bridge of a damaged ship, Captain Ryan watched the stars through a cracked viewport. He had seen too many friends die, but he refused to give up. "We cannot stop," he said to his officers. "Every life lost fuels our determination. We fight for them. We fight for everyone the Empire has hurt." Back on Lucas's flagship, the fleet received reports from nearby colonies. Survivors described the destruction the Empire had caused, the fear in their towns, and the small resistance movements that had begun to form. Humans realized that while they were fighting in space, the war was also being fought on the ground. Civilians were becoming soldiers, engineers were becoming tacticians, and children were learning to survive in a universe that had grown dangerous overnight. As the human fleet pressed forward, cracks began to appear within the Empire. Some alien officers questioned the decisions of their superiors. Whispers of fear and doubt spread through Imperial ranks. How could a species they had always considered weak outmaneuver and defeat their fleets? The Emperor demanded obedience, but even his loyal generals hesitated. The humans were changing the rules of engagement. The old ways of crushing opposition no longer worked. Alex communicated with Lucas and Emma from Earth. He watched every move, analyzed every report, and made recommendations. "Focus on strategic targets," he said. "Destroy their ability to control fleets, cut supply lines, and leave civilians unharmed. We are here to show that humans fight with purpose, not cruelty." Emma nodded. "We are proving something greater than strength. We are proving that humanity values life, but will never allow itself to be weak. Every move we make teaches the Empire that there is a price for every action they take against us." The human fleet approached a major Imperial supply hub. This hub was heavily guarded, and the Empire expected humans to attack recklessly. Lucas planned carefully. The fleet used hidden asteroid fields to approach undetected. Human fighters disabled perimeter defenses silently before the main ships attacked. Explosions lit the space around the hub as lasers tore through engines and turrets. Supply convoys were destroyed, slowing Imperial reinforcements. Civilians on board were evacuated safely by human teams. During the battle, Lucas received reports from ground intelligence. Several colonies under Imperial control had begun to rise in secret, inspired by human victories. They sabotaged Imperial equipment, hid weapons for the resistance, and spread news of human strategy. Even small acts of rebellion became powerful symbols. The Empire was not only fighting humans in space, but also facing resistance on planets it thought were secure. The cost of total war became clear. Human fleets were stretched thin, engineers worked around the clock, and Laura faced more patience than she could easily handle. Each battle left scars, and every loss was remembered. Lucas reminded his crews of their purpose. "We fight because we must," he said. "We fight to protect the lives that the Empire has tried to destroy. Every ship we save, every life we protect, honors the memory of Ben and all those who came before." Inside the Empire, discussions grew heated. Alien commanders argued with one another over the failures. The Emperor demanded more obedience, more aggression, but doubt continued to grow. Whispers of rebellion appeared even among loyal officers. They could not understand why humans fought with restraint, intelligence, and unity. For the first time, fear entered the Empire's core, and they struggled to maintain control. Back on Earth, Emma and Alex analyzed reports from each battle. They identified weaknesses, planned new strategies, and prepared the fleet for the next strike. Human forces were learning with every engagement. They improved tactics, increased efficiency, and adapted to every Imperial response. Humans were no longer reacting. They were controlling the flow of war. As the fleet prepared for another jump, Lucas walked the corridors of his flagship. He saw tired but determined faces. Soldiers cleaned weapons, engineers checked systems, and medics like Laura moved silently among them. Every person understood the cost, but also the purpose. Humanity was not fighting for conquest. They were fighting for survival, dignity, and justice. They would never forget Ben, the child whose death had begun this chain of events, and they would honor his memory with every action. Emma approached Lucas, her face serious but calm. "We have intelligence about the next target," she said. "A command station that coordinates multiple fleets. If we can disable it, the Empire's ability to organize attacks will be severely weakened. It will be dangerous, but it is necessary." Lucas nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We will move at dawn." Humans have never been afraid of danger, only the consequences of failure. And we do not fail. We fight together, and together we will succeed. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading for the command station. In the silence of space, each crew member reflected on the cost of total war. Families lost, friends gone, and colonies destroyed weighed heavily on their minds. But the determination to continue was stronger. Humans had learned to endure, to adapt, and to fight with purpose. They were no longer the species the Empire thought they were weak. The first strike against the command station was brutal. Human ships navigated through dense asteroid belts, avoiding sensors and ambushes. Lasers struck precisely, disabling shields and communication arrays. Explosions rocked the station, and Imperial forces scrambled to respond. Humans focused on military targets, leaving civilian areas untouched. The precision of their attack shocked the Empire. Alien commanders whispered in fear. They had never seen a species fight with such intelligence, discipline, and restraint. As the station fell, Lucas watched from the bridge. He thought about the people aboard, those who were fighting for the Empire but not for cruelty. He hoped they would survive, and he knew that humanity had proven something important. They fought not to destroy life unnecessarily, but to protect it and defend what was right. Back on Earth, leaders monitored the results. The victory was celebrated quietly, with a focus on preparation for the next steps. Human engineers repaired ships, built new weapons, and trained crews. Every victory, every lesson, every sacrifice was used to prepare for the larger battles ahead. Humanity was growing stronger, faster, and more united. As night fell over Earth, families lit small candles in memory of those lost in the war. Children like Ben were remembered, not just for what they had lost, but for the reason humans had risen. Parents whispered promises to protect life, to fight for justice, and to honor every human being. Laura sat quietly in her medbay, tending to the injured and thinking about the colonies, the battles, and the determination of humanity. Every life saved felt like a victory, every life lost a reminder of the stakes. The Empire was beginning to fracture under pressure. Alien officers doubted one another, generals argued, and the Emperor's anger could not restore control. Humans had shown that they were clever, relentless, and united. Each victory was not just a military success but a message. Humanity would never be weak, never be submissive, and never allow injustice to continue. Lucas stood on the deck of his flagship, looking at the stars. The next battles would be harder, more dangerous, and more costly. But he knew that humanity had learned to fight in a way the Empire could not predict. Humans were not just survivors. They were protectors, strategists, and fighters with a cause greater than themselves. And they would continue until the Empire understood that no human life could be taken without consequence. The fourth part of the story ends with the human fleet preparing for another jump. Engineers checked engines, pilots studied star charts, and medics prepared for casualties. Every crew member knew that the cost would be high, but the purpose was higher. The Empire had underestimated humanity, and now it would feel the full weight of a species united, clever, and unyielding. The human fleet advanced toward the heart of the Empire. Each jump brought them closer to the systems that had ruled over the galaxy for centuries. Lucas stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars pass by. He could feel the weight of the mission pressing on everyone, but the fleet was ready. Every crew member understood that this was the final push, the moment when humanity would show the Empire what it meant to cross a line that could never be forgiven. Emma joined him, holding a tablet filled with intelligence reports. "The Imperial core is heavily defended," she said. "Command fleets, orbital defenses, and planetary shields. They expect us to hesitate. They believe we will fall before we reach them." Lucas shook his head. "They underestimate us. Every step of the way, we have proven that humans fight differently. We do not just attack. We plan, we adapt, we protect. They will see that now." As the fleet approached the first core system, scouts reported clusters of Imperial ships waiting in formation. These were no longer simple patrols or convoys. These were the best-trained crews, the most advanced ships and commanders who had survived decades of warfare. The Empire assumed that humans could not handle such strength. They were wrong. The first strike was planned carefully. Human fighters flew ahead, drawing attention and triggering sensors. While the Imperial fleets focused on these small ships, the larger human vessels maneuvered into positions that gave them the advantage. Human lasers struck with precision, disabling weapons, engines, and communication arrays. Explosions lit the void, and the human fleet advanced steadily. The Empire's commanders shouted orders, but confusion spread quickly. Human tactics were unpredictable, adaptive, and relentless. Ships that seemed too small to matter struck critical points, forcing the Empire to divide its attention. Alien officers whispered to one another, unsure of how to respond. Fear and doubt spread as humans continued to fight with intelligence and restraint. Back on Earth, leaders watched the battle unfold. Alex monitored every move, analyzing reports and communicating with Lucas and Emma. He knew that the fight was dangerous, but he also knew that humanity had learned, adapted, and grown stronger with each engagement. The Empire had underestimated a species that refused to be weak. Every victory, every precise attack, and every saved life was proof that humans were not to be ignored. As the fleet reached the Imperial capital planet, Lucas received new intelligence. The planet's orbital defenses were massive, but Emma had found weaknesses in the control systems. If they struck the right points, they could disable the shields without destroying civilian areas. Lucas nodded. "Prepare the strike teams. We go in fast, precise, and controlled. This is not destruction for the sake of it. This is justice." The attack began. Human ships moved like shadows, striking key points in the orbital defense grid. Explosions rocked the surface, but human strategy avoided civilian zones. Imperial command ships were targeted first, their leaders and control systems disabled. The humans did not kill recklessly. They focused on military power. The precision and discipline of the attack shocked the Empire. Alien commanders could not understand how such a small fleet could cause such chaos. The battle raged for hours. Human ships danced between lasers and missile fire, taking damage but refusing to retreat. Laura and her team worked tirelessly to treat the injured, keeping morale high and ensuring that every crew member remained able to fight. Soldiers remembered Ben, the child whose death had started this war. His memory fueled their determination, and every action was guided by the promise that no human life was expendable. The Empire sent reinforcements, larger fleets, and more powerful weapons, hoping to overwhelm the humans. Lucas anticipated this and had prepared ambushes and counterattacks. Human ships used speed, strategy, and intelligence to counter every move. Alien commanders began to doubt their leaders. How could this species continue to win despite being outnumbered and outgunned? Whispers of rebellion spread within the Empire's core, as officers realized their leaders had underestimated humanity's courage, discipline, and intelligence. As the battle continued, Lucas and Emma led a strike team directly to the heart of the Imperial command complex. They faced heavy resistance, but their plan was precise. Human fighters disabled critical systems, and ground teams moved to neutralize key targets. Civilians trapped in the conflict were evacuated safely. Lucas watched as the Empire's command center fell into human control. The Emperor's orders could no longer reach his fleets effectively. Chaos spread through the Imperial forces. On the bridge of his flagship, Lucas communicated with Alex. "The command center is down," he said. "Their ability to coordinate is gone. The Empire is in chaos. We must press the advantage carefully but decisively." Emma updated him with sensor data. "Their fleets are retreating, disorganized. If we strike at the remaining military targets, we can force a surrender without destroying the planet." The human fleet advanced, disabling the remaining Imperial warships. The Emperor attempted to rally forces, but communication was fractured and fear had spread among his commanders. Human strategy had proven superior. Every attack was precise, measured, and effective. The Empire's power, built over centuries, crumbled in the face of human intelligence, unity, and determination. Alex watched the final stages of the battle from Earth. He felt pride and relief. Humanity had endured loss, adapted to challenges, and fought with purpose. The Empire had underestimated them, and now it was paying the price. He knew the war was ending, not with wanton destruction, but with the clear message that humans could not be threatened or ignored. Lucas received a final message from Emma. "The remaining Imperial leaders are surrendering. Their fleets are retreating. The core systems are under control. We have succeeded." He looked at the stars and thought of Ben. The child whose death had sparked a war had not died in vain. Humanity had honored him with every life saved, every ship maneuvered, and every battle fought with intelligence rather than cruelty. The human race had proven that they would protect their own at any cost. The surrender of the Empire was formal and clear. Alex delivered a final message to the galaxy. Harming a human child, or any human, comes with consequences beyond imagination. Humanity would not allow injustice or cruelty to continue unchecked. They fought not for power, but for dignity, survival, and the protection of every life. On Earth, people celebrated quietly but with purpose. Families remembered those lost, including Ben, and honored the courage of the fleet and the resistance. Ships returned from the core systems, carrying crews who were tired but proud. Engineers repaired damage, medics treated the wounded, and leaders planned for a future where humans would never again be threatened without consequence. Lucas walked among his crews, speaking to pilots, soldiers, engineers, and medics. He reminded them that the victory was not just military but moral. Humans had fought with precision, intelligence, and restraint. They had avoided unnecessary deaths while achieving their goals. Every person understood the lesson. Humanity would never be weak, never be submissive, and never allow injustice to continue. Emma stood beside him, smiling faintly. "We have changed the galaxy," she said, "not by conquering but by proving that humans fight differently. They will respect us now, or fear us if they try to harm us again." The final days of the campaign were spent stabilizing former Imperial worlds. Humans helped civilians, rebuilt cities, and ensured that no remnants of Imperial power could rise again. They offered guidance, protection, and a chance for peace. The Empire had fallen, but humanity had fought with honor. They did not destroy needlessly. They showed that they could fight and win without losing their humanity. Alex reflected on the journey. The war had begun with the death of one child, Ben, on a small frontier colony. That single act of cruelty had sparked a response that had reshaped the galaxy. Humans had demonstrated that their strength was not only in weapons, but in unity, intelligence, and the value they placed on life. The story of Ben had become the symbol of humanity's courage and resolve. Lucas looked at the stars one final time, thinking about the future. Humans had won, but they had also learned the cost of war. Every life mattered, every decision carried weight, and every victory came with responsibility. The Empire had underestimated humanity, but now the galaxy knew the truth. Humans would rise, adapt, and fight to protect their own, no matter the cost. As the fleet returned to Earth, the people of the planet waited to welcome them. Families embraced returning crews, and children listened to stories of courage, strategy, and determination. Laura moved quietly among the medics, helping the wounded and comforting those who had lost friends. Every person knew that humanity had faced an impossible challenge and had overcome it, not through cruelty, but through cleverness, courage, and unity. The final message of the war was clear: harming a human life, no matter how small, carried consequences beyond imagination. The Empire had learned, the galaxy had seen, and humanity had proven that it would never be weak. Lucas and Emma stood on the deck of their flagship one last time, watching the stars. The journey was over, but the lessons would never be forgotten. Humans had survived, fought, and won. They had honored Ben, every life lost and every life saved. The galaxy would remember that humanity could not be broken, that they fought with purpose, intelligence, and respect for life. And in that victory, the human race found not just revenge, but hope, strength, and the promise that no one would ever be forgotten.